Good afternoon, it's William with the Grand Duke Dmitri 1917 Diary Series, and we finished up last time with the very long diary entry of the 17th of November 1917. So now, in keeping with Dmitri's usual habit, we're going back in time so he can fill in the individual days that passed while he was writing his long diary entry. Starting with the 8th of November. Our recap for the final section of the long diary entry. Well, it was an interesting, brief, but interesting discussion of what the Imperial Russian Corps of Diplomats was going to do with ambassadors and diplomats abroad who weren't returning to Russia, but didn't have a stable, highly functioning government to receive their instructions from. Dmitri's opinion ran counter to what seems to have been the opinion of the majority of these diplomats, who felt like they should themselves coordinate their policy and just do it on their own. And Dmitri thought that, very interestingly, that you can't operate separately from whoever is in power, whether you like who's in power or not. All right, so here we go. We're going to do 1, 2, 3 of the shorter diary entries today, starting with the 8th of November, which was a Wednesday. The Yevrenovs hosted an afternoon tea. There were quite a few guests: Romero, his wife, Sardar Muazzam, Staroselsky, Madame Havard, Norquist. We played bridge, me, and poker. Lady Marling was there too. I had a long conversation with the Yevrenov and the Sardar about my expected departure the next day on the hunt with the Swedes to see a coup. I spoke about that hunt in my previous entries. Yevrenov began trying to persuade me not to go on the hunt, and he was vehemently backed up by Sardar Muazzam. They both said that it would make a negative impression in town because it was less a hunt than a punitive expedition by Lumberg and Havjordsen. That is the main reason they're going, and not at all for the love of the sport. Oh, dear Lord. Duke, it's my dog. He's going to give me a heart attack one of these days. Okay, Duke! Because it was less a hunt than a punitive expedition by Lumberg and Havjordsen. That is the main reason they're going, and not at all for the love of the sport. I myself knew that a gendarme squadron had gone to see a coup with machine guns, but that didn't bother me much. But seeing that around my participation in this expedition or hunt so much noise had arisen, I decided to decline the invitation and wrote Lumberg a letter in the evening. My things went without me. Staroselsky also withdrew, so only Lumberg and Filipov ended up going. Havjordsen left earlier with the machine guns. I'm a little sad to have turned down the opportunity to participate in such an excursion, but in general I thought earlier that I wouldn't manage to go. I feel a little guilty toward Lumberg. Lui poser un caprice à la dernière minute. Okay, 9th November, Thursday. I went riding alone in the morning. I lunched at home and played tennis in the afternoon on the club Imperial Court. I dined at the club as well with Staroselsky and Sardar. The food was disgusting. Cards were played in the evening. I didn't do anything, and thank God, because I have no available funds, and Staroselsky has not yet been able to pay the 1,000 tumans he owes me. I got home relatively early, around 2 o'clock. I spent 10th November, Friday. I spent the morning quietly and peacefully. I lunched at home. I played polo in the afternoon. My poor pony, Baccarat, hurt her leg. Her hoof cracked all the way to the flesh, and there was blood. I had to send her to Norquist Gendarme Veterinary Hospital. The game was much brisker because this time the players knew more about what to do and what their places were. In the afternoon, I went to the Club Imperial for the musicale tea. I felt mortal anguish. I played bridge. I dined at home. There were guests, Etter and Colonel Rawlinson, who had arrived from Baratov, where he is the British military agent. Okay, I hope I didn't rush through those too quickly. The first one, of course, is the longest and most important. So this hunt that was organized by the Swedish gendarmerie, whom we've talked about before, it was, Dmitri had some doubts about it from the start. He really wanted to go, it was this grand opportunity to go out into the desert and see part of the country that he, didn't have other opportunities to see. And do something masculine and active. But he always had a sense that maybe it wasn't going to work out. And as he says, Colonel Staroselsky withdrew relatively early. Well, the advice he was given here was quite on target. It was quite good, and thank God he adhered to it, because there were significant political ramifications. It became clearer and clearer that the hunt was just secondary to this punitive expedition. So the gendarmes were the ones who were tasked with, or took upon themselves, the task of keeping the tribes in the rural parts of Persia in line. And so they're going out here with machine guns. If you can imagine, Persia at this time is already at the center of the great game, this rivalry between the Russian and the British. And then you have this young man who is Russian, who is Romanov, and who is a potential future emperor of Russia. And if he is there hunting while Persian tribesmen are being slaughtered by the Swedish gendarmes, that's going to be a disaster, just a disaster. He surprises me a little bit, because he says, I wasn't worried when I knew that they were bringing machine guns with them. That didn't worry me. But now he's saying, seeing that around my participation in this expedition or hunt, there is so much noise, or so much noise had arisen. So he's less concerned with what the Swedes are going to be doing, and more concerned with the idea that there's already talk about him going on this expedition. So it is what it is, right? Sardar Muazzam, who was he? Well, Sardar was a title without a specific meaning. It just meant you were an important person. Very often, very often it was given to powerful military men, but it could just be a person of great importance, a nobleman who also had an important part in affairs. So his name was Abdul Hossein Teymurtash Sardar Muazzam. He was in his 30s. He was quite a young man and quite accomplished for his age. He was an up-and-comer in politics in Tehran. He was already a member of the Persian parliament. He was a nationalist and a modernizer and a future ally of Reza Pahlavi, at that time a non-commissioned officer in the Persian Cossack division, who would end up being the Shah, leading a revolution and being the Shah of Iran. So the fact that he was a modernizer, that he was very political, those things would have appealed greatly to Dmitri. This was sort of a natural friend for Dmitri here in Persia. And also, they had another thing, maybe even more importantly in common. They were both alumni of the Nicholas Cavalry School in Petrograd, or at the time they were there, St. Petersburg. So, because of the Russians being one of the important factions, groups in Tehran, associated with the Qajar dynasty. Yeah, some of the Persian nobles and aristocrats were sent for educations to Russia, and the Nicholas Cavalry School was probably, aside along with the General Staff School, the most prestigious military school in Russia, and with this sort of old boy network. So that brought Dmitri and this gentleman in Tehran together, Saddam was up. All right. So as for the other diary entries, interesting. He says, I didn't do anything, talking about playing cards. He's there. It's interesting that he's there at the club with Starosielsky and the Sardar. Yeah, as far as playing cards, I didn't do anything, and thank God, because I have no available funds. Okay, so he didn't have the money. And if he had given into the temptation and played, it would have been another disastrous situation like he had before. Okay, and then in the final diary entry, he talks about his horse, Baccarat, his polo pony, and I was curious about that. Was the horse's name, was he misspelling because he spells it Bakkara? Was it just a phonetic spelling of the card game Baccarat? Or maybe that's not a misspelling, maybe that's the Russian spelling of Baccarat? Or was there some other significance to the name? And it turns out that it was indeed considered an excellent name for a horse, that it referred specifically to the horse's lineage, and it was Arabic and Farsi. You had the word, and it could mean, something that is mechanically pushing forward. I don't know. If you're watching this and you speak Farsi or Arabic, maybe you're laughing. But anyway, I gather the likelihood is that the name Baccarat was a Persian name and not the game, as much as Dmitri loved the game. Then he fits this little utterly confusing thing in here. He says, in the afternoon, I went to the Club Imperial for the musical tea. Then there's this sentence, I felt mortal anguish, and then I played bridge. What the heck? What does that mean? I have no idea. I'm not usually completely baffled with anything Dmitri says in his diaries, but that I'm baffled by. Okay, what do we have next time? Well, we're going to be finishing up with the small diary entries for that week. The 11th, they go from the 11th to the 14th of November. And I will say, I have to admit, it's more or less a holding pattern. It's more or less the same things that he has been doing. But the one thing that diverges is that we're going to have more tension, more significant tension with Lady Marling, another blowout. So that wasn't a long time coming after they resolved the first blowout. So I hope to see you back for that, and take care.